Pretty much since Ben 10 first aired in the mid-2000s, or at least from about Season 2 onwards, we've had some aliens that were rarer than others. And one of the best aspects of Ben 10 is how well it manages to feel like this super expansive universe, while at the same time feeling incredibly well fleshed out and lived in. Only feeling more and more so the longer the series went on and the more space was explored. And not so surprisingly, the largest factor for that is the aliens themselves. Both Ben's transformations and the species they're from. They just feel so a part of the universe, even if some are sentient Lego gorillas. Each Omnitrix species just manages to feel so ingrained in the universe. So moving forward, we'll be talking about the rarest alien species in Ben 10. But before we do my usual cover each alien one at a time, let's talk a bit more broadly about how the other end of the rarity spectrum usually is explored, just so we can in contrast see how different the aliens we're about to cover are. More broadly, exploring these species outside of the Omnitrix tends to come in one of two forms. The main cast and we as an audience go off-world and explore their homeworlds, spaceships, or whatever planet a species might be settled on. Like we see for spider monkey species, the galvanic mechamorphs, or even the non-Omnitrix species like the incursions. Oh, and there's obviously all the Enor system aliens, a bit of foreshadowing there for later on. Or in the other category I'm talking about, those alien species find their way to Earth, which I'm now realising the incursions sort of fall into both categories. I'm more so talking about four-armed species coming to Earth alongside Luma, all the younger members of Accelerate species inhabiting Undertown, or really any of the background aliens we see in Undertown, Omnitrix transformations or otherwise. And now that we've gone over that, let's get into some alien species that you definitely won't be seeing faffing about in Undertown, in the rarest aliens in Ben 10. Starting incidentally from the beginning of Rare Aliens, and the alien that brought the introduction of additional aliens in the first place, we've got Cannonbolt. Introduced in the episode The Big Tick, Cannonbolt is a member of a mostly extinct species from a destroyed homeworld, which presumably was destroyed as a result of the Big Tick coming in and in a very Galactus kind of way, sucking the nutrients out of the planet, eventually eroding it away. So Ben presumably unlocking his species from being somewhat in the vicinity of the Big Tick, which had to have some trace amount of their DNA in it, or it could be entirely coincidental, since he was unlocked right before the Tick landed on Earth by Gwen faffing around with the Omnitrix. This all leading to Ben using Cannonbolt to rip it apart in some form of cosmic justice. From that, while their planet's completely gone, not unlike the Petrosapiens, it'd be a reasonable assumption that there are a handful of them out there that were off-planet when it was destroyed, like we see from however many other Omnitrix aliens hanging around the place like on the prison planet in Carcagon. I've got a real weakness for Cannonbolt. I've spoken about him more at length in an older video on the later additions to the classic roster, but let's touch on him more generally here. Out of series, he was supposed to be one of the original 10 aliens, but his slot was later taken by Diamond Head before everything was finalised. And just in case you were really unfamiliar with the series and the name didn't give it away, he's a living cannonball. He's this top-heavy roly-poly alien that curls up into a ball and uses his ludicrously durable shell when he bounces about all over the place. Highlighted especially well in his introductory episode, but I've always been more of a fan of Kevin's first time encountering him, where he completely overwhelms a now amalgam Kevin. Something about Ben using the 11th alien to fight an amalgam of his other 10 feels really thematically pleasing to me. Moving on to the big one, we have Alien X, who's definitely the most common on this list, but certainly earns a spot in this video, especially with the caveat that they exist outside of the Prime Timeline universe and outside of normal time and space in the Forge of Creation, which means they functionally don't exist in our universe. Except when they choose to, like towards the end of Omniverse, with them deciding to hold Ben accountable for recreating the universe, again, which they exist outside of, in the episode Universe vs. Tennyson. So in the Prime series timeline, they're so rare they may as well not exist, excluding Ben's use of the transformation, but that probably goes without saying, since that applies to literally every alien we're talking about. As far as in the Forge of Creation, we don't know how many are in there, but it's probably safe to say there's not all too many, but I'm not even totally confident in saying that, since that's just purely based on one showing. In saying that, we do know their numbers are increasing since we see a newborn Celestial Sapien in there, one young enough where, unlike the other members of the species, this one hasn't developed that secondary personality just yet. And on that, I know by the time Omniverse wraps up, Ben has complete control over Alien X, but let's say we're going back to the classic series where Ben was de-aged by the Fountain of Youth. Had he somehow had Alien X there, would he have turned into an infant Celestial Sapien and not had to argue with the two personalities for control, meaning he would be a toddler in complete control over everything? A bit of a side tangent there, but worth noting. And I'm sure by this point you're aware, but just in case you're not, Celestial Sapiens are functionally all-powerful beings who can warp space, time, reality, and all sorts, however they see fit, as long as their two personalities agree on doing so. Moving on to the transformation I'm particularly eager to get into, and the one that's probably the most straightforward at saying that's a rare alien, we've got vampire species, who actually, like someone we'll talk about shortly, have an episode surrounding their rarity and the possibility of their species fully coming back. Jumping back however many years, these Vladats were both a sentient species and the apex predator of the Anor system, being the system where all the spookier, monster-themed aliens are, like your Ghost Freaks, your Blitzwolfers, Snaros, and Frankenstrikes. In saying that, Vladats were the dominant species that used to use Frankenstrike's people as both slaves and a food source. This is before the other species all worked together and drove the Vladats extinct. That is, until series villain Zaskar used the Alpha Rune to resurrect Lord Transil, who presumably was the leader of the Vladats, leading to the species returning, at least with one member for now, along with Ben unlocking Vampire, who I adore, silly outfit or not, and had things gone Lord Transil and Zaskar's way, all those long-dead Vladats would have been resurrected and used as an army that each, using their mind control abilities, could have had armies of their own that would have subsequently taken over the universe. But thanks to Ben, but more so Dr. Victor, this wasn't the case. So now Lord Transil will presumably live out the rest of his life, trapped in a glass box, just close enough to the sun to cause him some serious discomfort, but not so close that he's completely turned to ash. And I suppose Ben is running around as Vampire from time to time. Why I draw attention to Vampire specifically amongst this list is that the rarity surrounding the species goes from a fun detail to the focal point of the narrative of the episode, and hugely adds to the history of the Anor system aliens, retroactively making everything that happened in the classic series that little bit more in depth. Moving on, Nanomech is an outlier amongst outliers. They're just not really a species at all. I cannot stress enough how much of a unique quality Nanomech has in the Omnitrix. They're not an alien in the conventional sense, they're an artificial hybrid created by the Omnitrix, blending Ben's human DNA with an alien nanite or nanochip during the events of Ben 10 Alien Swarm, the 2009 live-action film. And I'm sure even a lot of long-time fans of the series could easily have forgotten or missed it entirely, meaning that Nanomech made it onto this list as a bit of an oddity, being a species that didn't and won't exist outside of the Omnitrix. Ben really is the only member of the species. No outside this universe or resurrected DNA donor, the Omnitrix made an exception here and just did that. I'm quite surprised the series never really did anything with this. It's not that they didn't include Nanomech appropriately following their introduction, it's just more so that this really out there one-off wasn't replicated or pointed out in series whatsoever. I suppose you could say it's a carry-on from the classic series fusions, or even a follow-up to the DNA repair sequence in Alien Force, mixing alien DNA with the hybrid as a way of fixing or diversifying their damaged DNA. What I'm getting at is that I quite would have liked to see this replicated in some way, even if only temporarily. And speaking of, it's strange that Nanomech wasn't a temporary transformation. It's a bit odd this stayed as a permanent fixture of the Omnitrix, and this was pre-Ultimatrix and certainly pre-completed Omnitrix. I'm surprised this transformation carried on after the original prototype Omnitrix was destroyed. And getting into our final two transformations for this list, who are very much intertwined, we've got Diamond Head and Chromastone. Starting with Diamond Head, and in contrast to his species being the first we met a member of with Tetrax, the species is, for a good chunk of the series, functionally extinct outside of Ben and Tetrax. Prior to the events of the series, Vilgax came through to the home world, hiring Tetrax to steal this crystal that functioned as a backup for the entire planet and its population. Vilgax then taking a note from the Big Tick, destroying the planet, killing everyone on it, leaving Tetrax as the sole surviving member of their species. Luckily for us, there is another species on the planet other than Petrosapiens called Crystal Sapiens, and a member of that species, Sugilite, or the member of the species, acted as the guardian of the planet. Not so effective at the time the planet was blown up, but would turn out to be trapped in Ben's Diamond Head transformation after Ben as Chromastone gets shattered, only to reform as Diamond Head, then to be shattered again by Tetrax to reveal Sugilite, the only Crystal Sapien, who would then get a hold of that crystal with the backup for the planet on it and head back to revive the long-dead planet and people. There were some hiccups there with Vilgax getting involved, but Ben comes in and lends a hand as Diamond Head, resurrecting the people. So we'll call Diamond Head a temporarily rare alien species, and Chromastone's species only seemingly ever consisted of Sugilite as a one-off. So to summarise, We've got a presumably functionally extinct species in Cannibalt. I'm imagining they'd probably have a similar population to Saiyans from Dragon Ball, having a handful of surviving members of the species. The Celestial Sapiens, who do exist in numbers but not physically in the Prime timeline or any regular alternate universe, and an artificial transformation that doesn't really exist outside of Ben 10, along with a species entirely consisting of a resurrected member who's been trapped by the sun, knowing there's a human being wielding the Omnitrix running about using his DNA as a source. Another resurrected species, this time with the entire population coming back to life, and a one-off guardian of a recently resurrected people. If you've made it this far into the video and aren't subscribed, please consider doing so. Either way, I just appreciate you being here. Thanks for watching.